So, good, good.
Hey, Abby.
Hey, Scott.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Nice sound off.
Hey, Abs, how was your garage sale?
It's Friday and Saturday.
Oh, it's this weekend.
Yeah,
Oh, I could maybe still make it.
I bet you. That's why I told you I thought you should probably stop by. I'm going to leave about noonish on Saturday to head down to Bondurant, see Marquita.
Well, I might have to do that. You
But
never know
otherwise,
what you're gonna find.
Well, this gal, and you might even know her, Renee, because she was from Dunlap, who just died not too long ago, breast cancer, really young.
Just died of breast cancer really young.
Yeah, like maybe 48, 49 years old.
Why can't I think? I'm having a total mind block.
She was Sheila Brummer's best friend.
Sheila Brummer from Dow City.
Yes, her best friend.
So she might have been from Dow City.
She might have been from Dow City. I was thinking she was from Dunlap, but I could be wrong. I never met her. She just she's Sheila's best friend, and she passed away here last fall. And
Okay.
And then she was living up here in Sioux City, and
Okay.
her sons, she had two grown sons. They weren't very old, but older than college age, I'd say.
Okay.
And they took what they wanted from her house and then just left the rest up here. And so my neighbor is Sheila's mother-in-law, and she's been storing all of this stuff.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so the kids just
Okay.
said, just have a rummage sale. So that's really, I don't have that much because I just moved. So I did a really good job of, getting rid of my garbage. So I just have a few things that didn't fit in the new house.
Okay.
But
Tell me that
I can see I see furniture, I see antiques, I see, stuff, clothes,
Yeah.
rugs.
What's the address up there, Abs?
3812 Chippewa Court. It's about a block off of Hiawatha, just south of North High.
I was just going to say it's over by North, isn't it?
Yep. Come on by.
Okay. Cool. And that's on Friday and Saturday?
Yeah.
I have to be up there at a funeral on Thursday.
Oh, no.
But I'm going to come back. I have to be up there on a funeral. It was Garrett's godfather died.
Oh.
So I got to come up on Thursday. Actually, I'm leaving tomorrow night. I have a meeting tomorrow night, and I'm going up then to be up there because we're missing most of the visitation tomorrow. So we'll go up there and get up there later, and then we'll be up there Thursday for the funeral, and then we'll stay Thursday night and just come back early Friday morning.
Ah, okay.
Because I think we're supposed to do some stuff with them Thursday night. So, but yeah, I'll have to see. I don't know if I'll be back up. It kind of threw off my work schedule and stuff that we're doing, but I'll see. I might be back up there this weekend.
Sounds like it might have, yeah. But yes, my other little neighbor on the other side of me too. So it's a three person.
Cool.
Yeah.
So do you like your house better than the castle?
I love having a garage. That's like awesome. And I love not having to wade through homeless people to get to the door.
Yes, I bet that was a nice thing.
Yeah. So I love
Nothing leaking.
A little outdoor space. I've got, I have it's a little front yard, a little courtyard out front. I have a back with 3 big terraces that are all planted, and I have a big
cool
back. So that's all. I love all of that.
Well, awesome. Well, good for you.
I mean, I miss the.
Oh, that's a lot.
I mean, I missed the bonkers stories of the castle. I mean, it was good for lots of laughs and craziness, but
I know we would drive by and Garrett would say something. We'd say it was cool. And when he was little and we would talk about it, and I'm like, yes, remember that's where Abby lives. And he's like, she lives in a castle. Cause he would tell people, we're like, yeah, we know somebody who lives in a castle. Yeah.
the bats, oh my God, the bats, the fire alarms going on at all hours. Oh my God. But it was great when one of my best girlfriends lived next door to me, and we were like Rhoda and Mary Tyler Moore and
Some
Rhoda
more.
there.
How come it was echoing so bad?
Because I logged in. I was just trying.
Oh,
Scott, I had set this to record and it doesn't look like it's recording. Oh, it is. Yeah, it is.
That was me.
I see it.
Carter, did you get done mowing?
Yeah, I'm tired. I was hustling, but yes. The rain this week,
Yeah.
not good for scheduling that.
Do you have a lot to mow, Carter?
I mowed my yard and then one other yard. I don't know, it took a couple hours.
Oh my gosh, that's huge then. Huge lawn.
Were you nice? Did you go mow your mom and dad's lawn?
No, they like to mow their
Carter,
yards. So.
It's like Kitty Wampus from the house.
Yeah, but they have plenty
Yeah,
of time.
but
They can do that.
Aren't they doing free babysitting for Henry?
Yes, sometimes. It's not free. They like seeing him, It's
Well,
they get benefit.
he is super cute. You missed it, Scott, last week. Carter had his little guy. He was just adorable.
Well, yeah, I'm home and I'm hoping there isn't any screaming in the background, but when home work hour comes, if you hear screaming, my wife's not likely killing them. She's just, it's
Yours
like,
are all teenagers, though, aren't they, Scott?
yeah, 2 are teenagers and 1 is like right there. But it's, man, we're like one more week. We're all so done with school. Just need to stick a knife in this year. It's just done. Been a long year.
And then are you going on the vacation to the Boundary Waters again, or?
Yeah, end of June. End of June and 4th of July. Getting ready. We're gonna have a fun summer. That's for sure. What about you, Abby? Where are you going this summer?
We might try to redo the museum trip.
I was so
We're gonna
excited to hear about all the places you guys landed.
Yeah, we're gonna go south because Houston has like the 3rd best art museum in the country, and we've never been there. And it's like like you have the Getty and the Guggenheim and all of those, and like now Houston is supposedly better than anything at the Smithsonian. And I don't know who's a bunch of oil money that they've just dumped into fabulous architecture, fabulous art, and so we kind of want to see what. And then the other one was Crystal Bridges, which is in Bentonville, Arkansas, and that's the Walmart family's money. They have a Frank Lloyd Wright and a Buckminster Fuller that they have assembled and reassembled in Arkansas.
That's cool.
Do you love me some Frank Lloyd Wright?
Yeah. There's a gas station on the way to the Boundary Waters that's a Frank Lloyd Wright gas station.
It's in Cloquet. I've been there.
Have you?
Yeah, that town also has the hall, like the Museum of Mustards. It's like some other like something crazy.
Of course they do.
Of course they do. Yes.
The only thing I've stopped for in Cloquet are burgers. Gordy's.
Ooh,
Have you ever been to Gordy's?
no, I don't think so.
See, how could you go to the mustard museum? and
Because
not
I was with vegetarians, so we wouldn't have gone for hamburgers in Cloquet.
Well, that would do it. Yeah, it's such a weird, you come down the hill and you see that and it's like, what is that? A gas station? Holy cow, that's cool.
Yeah, we went to a Frank Lloyd Wright in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. That was it's the tallest hotel designed by a Frank Lloyd Wright that still exists.
Hmm.
So, and it was the Phillips 66 people, I think, that did that one. It was being remodeled, so of course I was going a little crazy. You know, there's just never a crappy old building that I can't just absolutely go wild about.
Have I told you about my big trip that I'm doing with my son?
No.
So we're doing as a family 2 Boundary Waters trips this summer, partly to train for our 3rd. Yes, I'm taking a lot of vacation this summer because I can. And we're paddling there's a challenge to paddle from International Falls to Lake Superior.
Oh my God.
And you have 8 days to do it. So it's 260 miles and it's like 40 miles of portaging.
Oh my word. How
So
much can a person row in a day? What's average?
we've got to average 35 for a few days and then like in the upper 20s, low 30s to make it.
It's like ragbri for kayaks. Is this
Yeah.
kayaks? It's kayaks, isn't it? That
A
you're
canoe.
in?
One canoe.
Oh, okay.
And if he does it, he'll be the youngest person to do it so far.
Oh wow.
But he's like 6'1", 215. He's not like a little kid, you know. He's got a full beard. He's like right there. So, but he's only 17.
He's a big guy.
He's a big dude. So that'll be fun. Really looking forward to that one.
Modale and Mondamon, I see you guys are both on.
Yeah,
Were
I
you
see-
guys, did you guys have questions? I know we had said if you had questions, you could be on at 6. I just didn't want you guys to not be asking questions if you heard us chatting.
I'm actually good. I'm just early for a change.
Oh.
Okay, awesome. I just
So
didn't
we're
want
just
you to be
kitty
on and not.
catting, but jump in.
Yeah, I just figured maybe I'd sign in now because I'll get busy in a few minutes and then I'll forget.
Well,
Linda,
good deal.
what
We're
town?
glad you're with us.
Linda, what
Thank
town? Is that Mo Valley?
No, I'm Modale.
Modale. Okay.
The problem is,
Eh,
What is going on?
sounds like a baseball game to me.
Oh, that's fun.
Abby, can I get co-host abilities, please?
Oh, yes. Let me do that.
Yeah,
need
you should
to
probably do that
make,
for everybody.
I need to make Scott a co-host too.
John, I like your background picture. Very appropriate.
hello.
Oh, wow. That's great. I love your background picture.
Okay.
Yeah, we should come up with some home improvement themed backgrounds for this.
We should. I like the blueprints. The blueprints would be great. Maybe that's
Maybe
something
we
we
have like
we
a
have
Tim-
we have interns to keep busy. We have 2 interns that we need to keep busy this summer. So Maybe they can do something like that. We haven't
We want
had
a
interns
construction
for
site in the
over a
background.
year.
Yeah. Maybe we could do one of those video ones of people like rehabbing a house in the background.
That'd be okay.
Tim the Toolman Taylor like walking back and forth.
That would be great. HGTV, one of my addictions.
There you go.
Oh, there's one that's not on HGTV that's called Zombie House Flipping, and I can't get enough of that. Those are ones that are almost red tagged that they take.
I've not seen Zombie House yet.
They're in Florida, so there's always alligators crawling out of their abandoned swimming pools and everything that makes you think that's another reason we don't want to live in Florida.
Yeah.
Our poor friend moving there.
Florida has less homeless people because of the alligators. Right?
Oh,
All right. I'm gonna go grab a couple things quick here. Abby, are you good? You're in the Miro.
yeah, you
We're
need
all
to
set?
start with sharing. And I'm queued up for your first bubble.
Cody, can you still see the game from your front seat?
Yep, front row parking.
Good for you.
I'll mute it so you don't have to listen to all the chants.
Fun. I can't wait to go see a baseball game.
Hey, hey, Abby.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Good. I'm actually cheating here and trying to do a 2-for-1. I got grandkids baseball game, so sitting in the pickup watching the game in this mode.
You're not the only person who's at a baseball game, believe it or not.
I can believe that. How have you been?
Been very good.
Great, great. So
Got any projects going somewhere?
we've been pretty slow. We actually are doing and I'll put you up one of these days on it. We're doing a
With my notes.
I believe it or not. We're totally out of lots, so we kind of decided we better jump in on that and get it going.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'll let you. It sounds like people are starting to come in. I'll get off the
Okay.
mic here for you. Okay. Bye bye.
Extra piece of paper.
The question is, are Todd's grandkids playing Cody's kids?
Right on
Ah, good question.
Hey, Skins, you got a piece of paper I can have? I remember the computer and not my notebook. I don't know if I was lunch or not. This is.
Deborah Nelson. Okay, so I know you can see me now. I thought I would tell you. So Garrett put it on his social, something about the Jiffy Mart. He said they made it twice as nice as Paradise and called it Jiffy Mart, and put a picture of the Jiffy out there somewhere when he was there one day. So now some of his friends that are coming from college to Harrison County to see him in June, they're going to purposely stop at the Jiffy because now it's like a selfie stop. So there you go.
Oh, God. Okay, well, you'll have to come with them so we can, then I can see you too.
They want to meet Bobby.
Huh?
Well,
Oh, you're meeting Bobby.
Garrett wants him to meet Bobby. So
Oh, God.
I know.
Okay.
So they're gonna come.
I love
because,
the
you know,
Jiffy Mart. Why isn't the Jiffy Mart a tourist attraction?
it is. So, you know, so
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad that Garrett is promoting it. Thank him for me. I'll thank you.
there
when he
you
comes
go.
down.
That's right. He said he might text it to you so you can see what he put out there. But so that's what the kids want to see is Bobby, Neil, and the Jiffy. So I don't know what that all means, but that's what they're planning.
Okay, that'll be great.
I bet they're bouncing for lasagna.
Oh, you want lasagna there?
I think so.
At-
Yes. Yes, please.
Who's got lasagna?
You do.
She says they were from Sylvania.
Oh, from Jiffy Mart, yeah, okay. I'll let them know that.
Talk to Stacy.
Her and Lynn.
If you've recently joined us, Abby put in a link to the Harrison County RHRA survey in the chat. I just dropped it in there again. When you come into Zoom, you don't see the prior chat. So let me know if you're not able to access that or if you have any problems, but you should be able to get at that in your chat box. Sounds like we may have a third baseball game up.
Woodbine, Missouri Valley baseball game. I'm going to mute my phone now.
That makes 3 baseball games going on right now, just so you know. We appreciate your commitment.
Hello.
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 We can hear you.
This is Rick Gow, Mayor of Woodbine.
Some. That's the 712 number.
Yes.
Okay. It is right here. Let me just.
Rob Cogdale, Woodbine Councilman, is on. I'm at the baseball game. Are they winning? Just first inning, but it's looking good. Oh, yeah, good.
Rob, is that your 712-269-5849? Oh no, there you are. I got you on the other way.
Yep. Yep,
Gotcha.
that's me. I'll have my phone on mute.
All right, Abby, you want to get started or you want to wait
Sure,
another
go
minute?
ahead. I'm ready to roll when you're ready to roll.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're really glad that you're all with us today. It looks like we have an awesome group together here, a lot of people. And so we're very thankful that you're taking your time, especially those of you warrior dads who are out there watching the baseball game, trying to do this at the same time. We appreciate that. So, we're really excited to help you work on improving housing in Harrison County. And I think what we want to do first is just take a few minutes to go through the list and get an idea of who's here. And so we need to, I'm going to bring up this bubble and Abby's going to type in. And so it's a little bit hard for me. I don't know a lot of you as well as Abby does, and there's some phone numbers. So I'm just going to work my way down my list. I'll list a few people in order, and if you could just identify who you are and where you're from, and if needed, which baseball game you're at. So I'm going to start my list. I see at the top RC, and then I see, I think, Rob 712, and phone number ends in 5849. So RC.
RC, City of Woodbine.
Rob Cogdell is a Woodbine council person.
Next up, I have Rick.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
No, what'd you say? I missed that.
Just wanted you to introduce yourself.
It's Rick Gow, Mayor of Woodbine.
Thank you, Rick. Next up
You're
on my
welcome.
list, I have a giant table of people eating food. And so I know it's going to be a little bit difficult, but if you could just take a moment, maybe work your way around the table and introduce yourself.
Yeah. All right, so this is the Mondayman group. Go ahead, Deb, introduce yourself.
I'm eating pizza. Deb Nelson.
Maggie Raines, Mayor.
Mary Siegel, Councilwoman. Christina Howery,
Banker.
Banker.
Michelle Watkins, Real Estate.
I didn't say.
So this is the Mondayman, and Deb's from the Jiffy Mart. This is the Mondayman group.
And we're
Thank you. All right, I have Renee, and then Carter, and then John.
Okay, yep, this is Renee Anderson with Harrison County Development.
Carter Oliver with the Extension Office.
John.
John Harrison, Missouri Valley Building Inspector.
All right. Next up, I have Jason, Tiffany, and Cody.
Jason Spohr, City Council, Logan.
Tiffany Shuring, City Council, Logan.
Cody Carrot with Wash County Bank, Logan, and reporting in from Bellevue at the softball game.
All right. And let's go now. I'm sorry, my names are now all switching on me on this thing. Alex, Linda, and Terry Jean.
Terry Jean from Model City Council, along with some city members as well.
Linda, Model City Clerk.
All right, thank you, Linda.
But not for Woodbine.
Alex is here, Mondayman City Clerk.
Awesome, thank you. How about Dan, Deb, and Meredith? Go ahead and take yourselves off mute.
This is Meredith Van Houten. I'm the city clerk in Dunlap.
Dan Coors, Logan, School Board.
Deb?
Deb responded in the chat and Woodbine Main Street Director.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, Angela,
Yes.
Little Sue, and Vonda.
Angela Winther, City Clerk, City of Logan.
And Little Sue.
Vonda also put in the chat, Missouri Valley.
Leslie, Hannah.
Yeah, this is Leslie Wright from Southwest Iowa Planning Council.
Anna Johnson at Spencer Real Estate, Logan, Iowa.
Okay. And now my list has scrambled completely. Is there anybody that I'm missing that I didn't call on? If you could just take yourself off mic and introduce yourself.
Todd Houston, New Style, Woodbine.
Chris Hartwig, banker, Logan State Bank.
Anybody else? All right. And Abby and I will go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Scott Tim. I am a community and economic development specialist for Iowa State University, and I live up in Decorah. Abby?
I'm Abby Gaffey, and I'm a community and economic development field specialist, and I'm in Sioux City.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to move on. We are going to be talking about housing today, and we're going to talk about different types of housing and kind of get you to start thinking about maybe opportunities that are out there and options that you may have when starting to think about developing a housing strategy for your community. So usually whenever people start talking about developing housing in their community, the first thing they want to talk about is new housing. And so, you know, that's for good reason. I think, you know, when you think about increasing the availability and quality of housing in your community, new housing is the first thing that comes up. It's really the easiest, it's the most direct way to increase the overall supply, and it will also have the most direct impact to your tax base, right? So that's always a good thing. New housing can also be built in response to the current market. And finally, new housing will be built according to building and zoning codes, which are always really helpful to have safe housing, right? So those are some of the reasons why people want to think about and immediately start to think about building new as the first time, the first thing they think about building. But new housing also has some challenges. And so one of the things that we see a lot when talking about new housing in especially rural communities, it's really difficult to get contractors to be interested in the homes that are at the price range that you need for that community. So if you are talking about, you know, homes and you really in the community, you're looking for homes to come in around 150 grand, it's difficult to get contractors to be interested in building homes in that range, if that's the range that's needed. You might not have infrastructure in place in your community. And so new construction along with it, there are a lot of pieces that you need to think about before you start putting homes up. Markets may be affected by national or international trends. I think right now everybody is very aware that housing is super hot. I'm sure we've all got lots of stories. I found out one morning that my neighbor sold his house because there was a sold sign in the front yard. And he didn't even think he was going to sell it. He got a phone call from somebody who said, I think I know somebody who would really like your house. And then, you know, when you talk about building new homes, contractors may need to build lots of homes quickly, and that can cut back on quality if you're really looking at pounding out a lot of homes really quickly. So there are a lot of things that make building and doing new construction challenging. And there are lots of other options that are out there. Another important issue, especially in rural areas when we're thinking about building new housing, is this idea of there being a value gap. And so it might cost $200,000 to build a house, but the market value of that house may only be at 180. And so who's going to take on that risk? You know, is that going to be your local government or economic development group that's taking on that risk? The contractor who's taking on that? Who's going to be taking on that risk of the value gap when you're looking at the difference in what it costs to build a home versus what the market's willing to bear? Okay, So when you're doing new housing development, there are a lot of things that you really need to consider. Where are you going to put that housing? Do you need to look at land acquisition? Do you need to look at what infrastructure is in place? What do you need in place to make it work? How are you going to pay for it? Do you have down payment assistance programs in place? What about utility fees? Are there any tax abatement or TIF options that might work for you? Are there construction loans that are available? How are you going to look to pay for all of this new housing that you're considering putting up? When we're talking about infrastructure, this is what we mean by infrastructure. So increasingly, I think we've seen, especially now, the people who are moving into my neighbor's house are moving up here because they can work remotely. So they're moving from Ankeny, and both of their jobs now are allowing them to work remotely. And so broadband is something that is extremely important now when you're looking at housing. But we're also talking about your sanitary sewer, stormwater, roads, sidewalks, transportation, gas, water, electricity. All of these things are really important. So it's important to think about, where do these things already exist in your community? And what do you provide or require the developer to build? How are you going to help either incentivize or promote or help this infrastructure get into place? And so we're going to ask a question here, and Abby's going to fill in. There are a lot of people here from a number of different places. So if you could just be patient and take your time, but if you could chime in, think about, where does infrastructure for new construction already exist in your community? And so when you're ready to answer, go ahead, take yourself off mute, identify yourself and your community, and tell us where you have spots where you already have infrastructure existing.
This is Angela with the City of Logan. So a couple places we already have infrastructure in Logan would be a few random lots where dilapidated houses have been torn down, or there was a fire, for example, and they're just an empty lot where there was a house. So there's already water mains, sewer mains, streets, etc. there. Also, we don't have any development areas at this time, but we do have some land that is near our school, for example, where there's already a street, already water and sewer infrastructure. It's just a matter of converting the land from either farm ground or industrial, etc., into housing.
All right, thank you. Who else? Is this a sign that there's a lack of infrastructure, or is this everybody feeling kind of shy tonight?
This is Clint Sargent with Missouri Missouri Valley. And really, I think the land that we would have with the current infrastructure is going to be really popular once we get our bypass through. But it all kind of hinges on that, with that flood mitigation and that protection that can become with that. So there's some unknown there. Otherwise, several years ago, the city had looked at some annexation to the east of town outside the floodplain. There is some sewer out that extends that direction, but limited other infrastructure out that way.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, Woodbine is in a favorable position right now in that we're adding quite a bit of development area. I mean, I guess I'm not bashful. Todd Easton's on the call. They're developing a large subdivision right outside of town, and they're going to have to put in all the infrastructure and everything, but it's going to be a pretty significant expansion of town. So, and I think, you know, in the long run, it's going to serve us for a lot of years of growth.
Okay. Thank you. And I just added a comment from chat from Little Sue. Lots with existing dilapidated homes have sewer and water hookups. So thank you for that. Anybody else? I'll note that one of the ways that we're doing this, you'll be getting a report with all of this brainstorming and work you have done. And since we have so many different communities represented in these sessions, we're color coding what you're saying. So we're keeping track of who's saying what as well. Any other thoughts about where you might have infrastructure for new construction in your communities?
Dunlap
Hey.
did do a new project, and we have new infrastructure at our new housing addition or by our golf course.
Okay, and somebody else is going to hop in there.
Yeah. Hey, this is Rick Gow, Mayor Woodbine. We're fortunate enough to have a STEM program with a construction management program, which has revitalized 2 old houses into new houses, and we've nuisance abated a few houses and built new houses there. This program with these kids is being led. We've probably added 5 or 6 brand new houses that have been sold and currently building a new one. So we're on the right direction there.
Okay, and I grabbed a couple more comments in the chat. Anybody else? If not, I'll go ahead and keep moving on. Okay, vacant lots, you know, in existing residential areas generally have needed infrastructure and can be developed without the need for much financial support from the city. So that's why this is a really ideal kind of place to look. But it also can be more challenging to build on those smaller lots. So whatever laws or code or ordinances you have in place might make it impossible for you to do that. So if you have laws where you can't build on smaller lots, that's going to limit some of the things you can do. If you have large setbacks or minimum lot sizes, it might make it difficult or impossible to build on those smaller lots. So it might require you to take a really hard look at your ordinances and look at your code and make some adjustments if that's a place where you have potential to be able to do some developing. Irregular lots can sometimes be combined. So you could put a couple together to make a buildable lot, but sometimes a city or a nonprofit needs to take the lead to make that possible. So it's going to take some planning and it's going to take some thoughtfulness, and it might make some changes. It might take some changes to your laws. So, you know, you want to be looking at all of this because you want to try to lower that risk for developers, for people who are interested in coming in and doing that kind of thing. So we have another question here for you. Do you feel the vacant lots available in your community? There's a mistake in that question. So the question is basically, do you feel like the vacant lots available in your community are buildable? Are there spaces where you've got space, vacant lots that are buildable?
This is Brent Hazing from Missouri Valley, and I would say that a lot of the lots that are available in Missouri Valley either have to first have the old house brought down, or, you know, even if the house is brought down, the lot might not be of an appropriate size for, let's say, a newer construction. So that would be an issue there. And then anything we do have that's easily buildable is located in a floodplain. So, you know, we would need some mitigation there in order to be able to build in those areas as well.
Okay.
In Logan, we do have a few lots where prior to having our zoning ordinance, those were very small lots, less than the minimum 7,500 square feet requirement. So we have a few that are perhaps say in the 5,000 to 6,000 square foot range. They don't meet our current zoning code. So they're really only good for additional yard space to adjacent lots or accessory building for those lots, etc. Some of them there's just no way to have access for, let's say, the rear of the house or a garage or anything like that. So they sort of get passed over for any type of future use.
Other folks?
Well, I guess in my opinion, the lots that I see around Woodbine, to me seem pretty decently sized. And maybe, I guess the ones that I've noted are pretty good sized lots. I think the issue is getting the owners who aren't developing them to let them loose and just turn them over and let them be developed.
That is a common issue that we've heard in community after community. Lots and buildings are difficult to sometimes wrangle away from people. All right, I've got Alex from On Damon. I'm going to put your note in chat. The lots that Mondamon have are dilapidated homes that need torn down.
I want a Mountain Dew, and I guess you can get puffs. And then Audrey needs something to drink. Yeah.
So I'll drop that in also. Dale's basically the same with lots of vacant lots and abandoned houses. Yes, it's just taking them over. Okay. Anybody else?
Scott.
Yep.
Scott, this is Renee. I did talk to Jeremy at our county GIS office, and because of the data that the county has, I asked if he would be able to generate for the 7 communities, if he would be able to get some maps made for me showing where all the current vacant lots are in town. No matter who owned them or what it was. And that way, even though some of the people in those towns might know that, I thought overall that might also be good for you and Abby to see, and sometimes just for everybody representing their towns to kind of see, visualize it all at the same time. So he's working on those maps. I just was talking with him about that today, and I know he's in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
That would be great, Renee, especially if he can overlay the ones that aren't vacant yet that we know will be vacant because they're buyout properties.
Okay, he would have to work with the towns, or somebody would have to be telling them that, because he doesn't have that.
It's the list from them. He can just pull their GIS coordinates from their addresses.
Yeah, if the towns could get that information to him, that would be great.
Most of them have a list.
All right, and I think that will be super helpful when you start to get into the implementation planning. That type of resource for those groups that are starting to develop your plans would be super helpful to start to look at where's their potential. Alex says, Renee, super smart idea. We all agree. Anybody else? Thoughts about vacant lots available in your community? Are they buildable? All right, let's move on. So we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some examples And actually, Abby, I don't know quite as much about the Maquoketa pocket neighborhoods as you do, but we were sitting in on a presentation talking about some of these. Do you mind jumping in and talking a little bit about the Maquoketa project?
No problem. When we were talking about like having lots that are kind of irregularly sized, or that they were originally, 5,000 or 6,000 square feet, now we need them to be kind of 7,500 square feet. A lot of times we can end up with a collection of lots that are just of a weird size. In Maquoketa, this one is downtown, and this was a old Chevy dealership. So it's in the downtown, and it butted up against the hospital on one side, and on the other side there's school. So two big major employers for their community, the hospital and the school district. And they wanted to kind of look at addressing some of the needs for their local housing, workforce housing in particular. And it says over the last 16 years, housing starts in the past 6 years. So the market just was not keeping up with what they needed to have available for the community. So what they did is what they called a pocket neighborhood. And they're a little bit smaller houses, but they all are face inward so that they kind of share the amenities. This was done by East Central Iowa COG, which is the SWPCO of Eastern Iowa. But all the houses face inward on this kind of shared lawn area that's big, beautiful gardens and gazebos and a walking trail through all of it. But they were priced at an affordable price that was affordable to people who are working at the school district, people who are working at the hospital, RNs, LPNs, radiologists, people that have those kinds of jobs at the hospital. So they were a little bit easier to fit into that space. And because the infrastructure did exist, because it's downtown, they have the garages facing out on the parts of the street, so there was no increase or decrease in traffic. They didn't have to do anything that made more traffic happen than what was normally there to begin with. So what they were able to do is they did a little leapfrogging development. So because when you do construction in an already built up neighborhood, it's kind of disruptive. So they kind of did every other lot until they filled that in. It was very nice little project that's in a very small town. Maquoketa is under 10,000 population. And John Harrison's pointing out that Carter Lake Club was designed similar to that. So yes, it is. And in your final report, if this is something that's interesting to you, ECI COG has the plans for all of this. They have the schematics and blueprints and everything like that they are more than willing to share with anyone who would be interested in doing a pocket neighborhood in their town. Go ahead, Scotty.
Yeah, and I think we just had a couple of other pictures. These were some of
That's kind of the layout, how they did
the
it.
layout. Yep. And then this was an update on where they were at, getting some of their construction going. And then we also had in a prior workshop that I was doing, there was another example of a pocket neighborhood in Des Moines. And so these are some of the pictures from that development, very similar to what we were talking about. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to drop this link into chat. So if you want to take a look at that later, you can take a look at that example. All right. So we're moving on to you, Abby. Do you want me to continue? I need to type, so you need to share, yeah? You're on mute, Abby.
Okay, you're popped down. Let me share my screen. I'll have to get up here. Well, come on here. Okay, and let me get to where I'm at here, Scott. Oh, golly.
You're way back.
I know I'm way back. Hang on, everyone, don't look too close or you'll get dizzy.
All the way down below. There you go.
Oh, golly. Oh, I apologize. I'm going to have to get to where I'm at here. Okay, here we are. Sorry about that. It won't let me take my screen down because we're recording this. Okay, so new single family construction. That's what most of our communities are interested in rural Iowa because we're kind of looking at single family homes. And stick built is the preferred construction method for our part of the country, which you just your traditional built on site. You know, we like to have basements. We have tornadoes in Iowa. So just your basic single family home. But we also have had some major improvements in modular and manufactured homes over the course of time. I mean, they have vastly improved. They still have to meet building codes and inspections that are equivalent to stick built. So modular and manufactured housing is a solution that we can look at when we talk about those infill lots. Something that's manufactured housing is easy to snap in an infill lot because you could drop your foundation in, get that ready to go, and set a modular on, and it reduces the amount of time that a neighborhood is disrupted to construction. So it's a viable option in places where we might be doing some additional construction in a neighborhood that already exists. We try not to get people too upset with that. We look at single family construction most of the time is going to be market rate, meaning that it isn't necessarily always going to be affordable to people that are particularly low income, but there are projects that do single family housing for income qualified families. And the ones, of course, that are most famous would be Habitat for Humanity type projects, but also our COGs throughout the state. Not every single COG like SWIPCO does construction, but quite a few of them do and are getting more involved in that. And also the COGs are involved in the Homes for Iowa program, where modular homes are being built at the prison and being brought out to communities that they're just putting onto foundations and then sold at regular rates. So a lot of interest in new construction for senior citizens. People who want to age in place are looking at condo type or townhouse situations where you might have 2 to 4 units that maybe have a shared wall or have some sort of shared amenities like the Makokata Park might be. And those are people who still want to have the tax advantages of owning their property, but don't necessarily want to go into senior housing or don't want to go from living in a single family house to a rental apartment. So a lot of our communities are looking for things where there are bedrooms on main floors, 0-step entry, garages, if not handicap accessible bathrooms, then bathrooms that can be adapted to that in the future. So looking at a lot of construction methods that help people age in place using new construction. And we kind of talked a little bit at the beginning this evening about why as community leaders, we want to try to promote site-built housing is because in a lot of times, even if we have a developer like Todd come to town and do housing, he's going to hire a bunch of subcontractors who are local businesses. There might be a local plumber, a local electrician, somebody who does masonry work, somebody who does painting, drywall, landscaping. So a lot of times, even when we bring in a developer from out of town, he might hire a lot of people to do local work. Site-built housing also promotes higher income levels, which attracts people to our communities who want to live in our community, work in our community, send their kids to our school districts. And it kind of helps maintain the lifeblood and the revenue stream that we are required to get to have the services available in our community and keep on growing. So our ability to provide incentives is sometimes a case of a mismatch between what we might have and what we're able to get. So we want to try to use incentives as much as possible. And it gets difficult because you have to kind of deal with the NIMBYism. Why did this developer get money when I built a house and I didn't get the same thing? And so you have to kind of try to surmount some of those objections that people are going to have locally, because you have to kind of show them the picture of why we need the housing in our community. What is riding on this? Our workforce decisions that are riding on our need for housing, our recovery from disasters that are requiring us to look at our housing, our need to continue to have basic and important services like our school districts and our hospitals and our retail base. All of those things, we want to try to make sure that we retain them. And that sometimes might mean that someone gets something that you didn't get to have yourself when you built your house in 1974, right? So we have to kind of make those things. So there's some things that you can do for incentives. You can give away lots to someone who's willing to put a house on it. You can waive connection fees to the utilities to connect to the water and to the own your own electric, you can waive the fees for those. You tax abatement. Iowa Code 404 provides for tax abatement that gives you your 10-year graduated abatement or 3 years at 100% of the value of new construction. So there's a lot of things that a local community can put together. You can also give people money, pay for something, pay for the grading of the property. You know, we're in the Les Hills and we don't do a project out here without having a substantial amount of grading in it. We take on the cost of that. The other person that you can subsidize is the buyer. You really only have two people that you can support, the person building the house or the person buying the house. So you can look at things like down payment assistance, looking at that to provide a way to help somebody afford the house, and talk about that value gap, reducing that value gap so that a house that maybe is worth 200,000 that we can only sell for 180, some way to make it possible for someone to get into that house at the price that they are able to get a bank loan for. So we might look at ways that we incentivize somebody who's buying the property that we're selling. This is why we kind of talked a little bit about manufactured housing is a little bit more affordable, less stress. And the other thing it does is if it's really nice to have, if you have a very immediate need. You guys did not get hit as hard in the floods as some of the other communities did. But like, for instance, in Malvern, they pretty much had to create a subdivision overnight because they had to pick up a lot of the slack from Pacific Junction and places where there, some of the unincorporated areas had had a really big loss. So sometimes things like manufactured housing, because you could do it so quickly, if you're in an emergency, or if Renee lands you the big, like, a big auto manufacturing job, and they're going to be there in a week, we might have to create housing quickly. Manufactured housing is a solution in those kinds of situations. The other thing we have available would be multifamily construction. These are a little bit different skill set as far as construction goes, because they're a little bit larger footprints, but they could include things like apartments. In our rural communities, we don't think about the assets that are currently existing in our downtowns. A lot of our downtowns have great buildings that have been used as commercial structures over the years, and maybe there's a business on the first floor and nothing upstairs. So our upstairs housing might be something that's available that we could look at, that could be market rate apartments or income qualified for someone who's needs some assistance or a lower rent to be able to afford to live there. And those kinds of things are called adaptive reuse. And Todd's on our group, and he knows a lot about adaptive reuse. So it could be something like using an old school. I lived in one of Todd's properties for 16 years happily in an old school. We do a lot of old schools throughout Iowa, but it could be a downtown business. There's a lot of old warehouses that have a lot of open space that's easily converted to apartments or lofts. The city of Ottumwa has done about 30 to 40 downtown lofts just in the last few years that are just beautiful. Some of them are in old shoe stores, is in one of them. There was an old library. When they built their new library, they converted their old library into apartments. So looking creatively at some of the buildings that we have located in the community and looking and seeing if there's something that we can adapt for multifamily housing. Those are great projects. They're fun projects to do, and they really add a lot of value to the community. Usually when I'm advising communities that are just getting started in housing, I always say you should probably start with senior housing. And the reason for it is that people don't hate old people so much, right? So there's a little bit less of the not in my backyard. Iowa is an aging state. There's a lot of us that, have COVID hair now out in the population. It's easier to deal with senior housing because there's a lot less drama involved in serving this population. The need is there. And while there are low-income senior citizens, there are never any no-income senior citizens. The presence of Social Security and pensions and other forms of revenue mean that you're more than likely going to get paid on a pretty reliable basis if you do senior housing. So that's a good starter project because we have a need in our community, and it could be things like multifamily housing, apartments. It could be assisted living. Nursing homes fit into that, but as more of a medical basis. But most people want to try to stay as independent as possible as long as they can. So looking at things like even little condos and townhouses is appropriate for senior housing as well. The other benefit to working with senior housing as a start is that it has a tendency to open up the rest of your housing stock in the community. I know that apparently my parents, like the minute that they hit their 50s, decided that they didn't need to spend any more money on their house ever again. So there's a lot of times where we look at this situation that's called deferred maintenance, where we might have senior citizens moving into a new project, opening up that housing stock, but that housing stock needs a lot of investment to make it attractive to new buyers. Not only just deferred maintenance, but just over the course of time, people's habits and tastes in housing change, right? And there's no better example of that than the pandemic we just lived through, where all of a sudden, your house is your work site and you live there, and it's your kid's school, and your spouse is working from home and you're working from home. And all of a sudden, all that great open concept space with no doors is totally noisy. No one has a space to do any of their schoolwork. And now tastes are going to change to, we need some spaces that are dedicated to certain activities, right? So we might do something like that. People have discovered that, oh my gosh, my house is, we think about people downsizing, but during the pandemic, we were really looking at people wanting to upsize, people saying, we need more room for all of these different activities that we now need to engage in. And our home is just going to be the basis of a lot more activity than we ever planned on having in the past. So we'll take a look at how people change. A lot of our older homes don't have things like closets, right? Because like in a lot of, cute little Victorian houses, they don't have closet space. They used, armoires and dressers and bureaus and stuff like that. So this can indicate a lot of investment in rehab that has to happen beyond just what you would expect. And the things that you would expect to have to do in a house that you have to substantially rehab include things like all new plumbing, electrical, HVAC, windows, roof, gutters, all of that stuff you expect to have to do because it all has a lifespan. A roof only lasts 20 to 30 years. You gotta replace it. You gotta replace windows. So you expect those things, but then you have to also make those lifestyle accommodations that make it easier for a family to do a more turnkey acquisition of that property, rather than having to not only deal with the mortgage for the price of it and then add on all the rehab on top of it. So that's something that you can look at, developing programming that works with that kind of rehab housing. A lot of times low-income housing or affordable housing gets a bad rap because, people think it's just for people who can't afford to pay their rent, right? And that's not who we're talking about. We're not talking about building homeless shelters in your communities. We're talking about people who are in some of these service jobs that are super important to your workforce. Your teachers, your people who work at the hospital, your public servants, your police officers, people who work for the county, your people who work in your manufacturing sectors, in particular, people who would normally have to drive in from, maybe even from Omaha or drive down from Sioux City. Those are the kind of people that we're looking to try to find housing that's affordable to them, because we have people who are coming out of college with, a mountain of debt that are just not going to be bankable right now. They might not be bankable for a few years, but we still need to hire these first-year teachers, and they have to have some place that they can live in our communities that is a match for their salaries. So the state also has some funding that's available to help in some of these professions, particularly if somebody has done some service in the military. There are some specific programs for people who are veterans as well. So that's something that you can take a look at, is in terms of creating incentives to help people that are in these kind of necessary jobs find housing in your community. So we have a little question here. Scott, are you going to do some typing for me?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yes, I am.
On B2, the biggest barriers to building new homes in our community are. What do you guys think?
When you speak up, if you could name your community too, so I can color code you. Thank you.
I would say the biggest in Logan definitely barrier is not only available lots, but people no longer are happy with a tiny lot. So they'd like some of the amenities of living outside of town, but they like being in town, so they want you know, an acre of land or more, and there just aren't anything in areas where it's already developed available in that size.
What are some other barriers that you think you've encountered so far in attracting new housing to your community?
This is Brent Hayes.
Well, this is Rob Cogdill.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay, sure. All right. So Missouri Valley, Brent Hazing. You know, one of the things that you know people are posting on here, we have the same issues. You know, ours is topography. You know, too much land in the floodplain, or you have to go build on a hill, and building a hill kind of gets expensive, especially when you're talking about moving, you know, trees and soil and everything else, and it just takes a lot of extra time. It's not, if we had some flat ground, you know, to be able to bring people in so they can put up more than one house at a time is ideal. We don't have any of that right now because of the flood ground or floodplain. You know, so every house that's built in Missouri Valley is built actually outside of city limits, and it takes, you know, some effort to be able to build that one house because of just the fact that you're building it on a hill. You've got to put septic and wells in and et cetera. So, and that's not even building in town. To build in town, there's just not enough available lots.
This is Cody Carriage from Logan. I guess my idea, is that the limitation I see, and that we see it a lot, not only in all the towns, I guess, is the limited fiber optic connections. Also, I think we got to think about what I've seen work really successful over in Washington County and around Blair is having rural water systems that allow not only does that help these smaller communities, connecting them from one place to another to help get water from one place to another, but also what that would allow to happen is developments outside of the city limits, which would then move people out, some of these younger folks outside of the city, freeing up housing within the smaller communities, and also boosting overall population and housing opportunities throughout the whole county. So I think those are a couple of things we need to look at and think about. Those are bigger picture probably.
Absolutely, but that's part of this conversation we need to have with our strategic planning sessions.
I think I'm going to bring up the issue nobody wants to talk about, especially in Missouri Valley, is we probably need to annex areas outside of town so that we can get grant money to bring that the infrastructure to developments and new developments. There is another new development, a new subdivision that's going up between Missouri Valley and Logan. I just got the plat last week, and I don't think the covenants have been put together yet. I think that's one issue. I think the second issue is providing a buyback program for people that are in the floodplain so that they can build affordably in some of these other areas. We need to reach out to developers. And the other thing that we have a shortage of is builders in the area. We need builders.
Anyone else?
I think sometimes, financing and affordability are an issue. I think about in Woodbine, it's to me, it's an American dream little town. But what our town, what we crave, what we need, we've got a lot of employers. We need young people. We need young people in the schools. And a lot of times the young people, as in this environment of quick inflation, and even without, prior to this quick inflation, if we're going to have good, high quality housing stock, it can be difficult for them to get past a down payment. And so, access to, creative financing or, whatever, so that the young workforce that we want in our towns can afford to be there, but also in the sort of high quality housing that we want to be our towns to be made of.
Agreed.
This is Cody. This is just a banker and me chiming in on this. From an affordable financing options, I mean, I think these towns have a lot of benefits over a bigger city where USDA financing is available. There's SWIPCO grants that are available and those sort of things. So I don't think the financing is necessarily part of the deal. It's just more about getting the housing out there and we'll get them financed. I'm confident in that. We actually have somewhat of an advantage over the big cities because we have a lot more financing options available for young and first-time home buyers to get in with limited and no money cash, down. So that's really not an issue in these communities. It's just having the available stock available to get financed. So I think if we build it, they will come.
The land prices in especially Missouri Valley, but throughout Harrison County that I've seen are probably 50% lower than a lot that's a third the size in Omaha or Council Bluffs. So the affordability of land is there. Again, I think it's the shortage of builders and building the infrastructure, and you're going to have to do some annexing at some point. These communities have to grow the tax base.
This is Todd from Woodbine, and maybe some of the bankers could chime in on this question, I guess, is in the past, we've had a hard time getting the new construction house, even some rehab houses to appraise at the cost of what it costs to build. And I didn't know if that's kind of still hitting us or has that been able to be covered?
Trick question there, Todd. I mean, yes, for some in some places, yes. I'm seeing appraisals come in closer, but we're seeing a rapid appreciation. So we're still going to see some of those trailing behind. But from a good news standpoint, I definitely think there's some quality sales out there right now with a lot more of the inventory moving. So not as big of an issue as before, but that's always going to kind of be an issue with lumber prices and material prices up where they are. Getting those appraisals to come out on a new construction is definitely a challenge.
That is good to hear.
Okay, we'll move on, guys. Talked a little bit about new construction. Todd just kind of led us into talking about rehab and when the money we have to put in to kind of keep the existing housing stock that we have. A couple of reasons why we want to try to keep the housing stock that we have is that clearly it's so hard to replace it. It's so hard to get development, to get the numbers where we need them to be, just doing brand new construction. So we have to try to retain as much of the housing stock that we have in good condition. It too also supports local contractors, just a different set of builders. It might be people who maybe only do a couple of houses a year or do a certain kind of, flipping. We have a lot of people who are interested in flipping houses. So people kind of doing some do-it-yourself type work. It does help support neighborhoods because the theory of the broken windows being that once you start seeing one house go bad, then it starts this kind of inevitable cycle of decline within a neighborhood. And so you try to use rehab as a way to preserve the neighborhoods that we have. when I was running back in the day, a million years ago, when I was running urban renewal neighborhoods up here in Sioux City, the very first project I would always do in every new neighborhood that we did was a big painting program. Always did a painting program just to try to get people to see something's going to happen in this neighborhood. Let's get something that people can visually see, that people can connect with, that lets them know that I too could do something with my property. So looking at doing something like that, we want to look at maintaining the historic value and significance of the properties that we have in our communities. Like you were just talking about Woodbine being such a cute little all-American town, you know, and what you kind of expect when you come into our communities in Western Iowa, you know, we have kind of our own little look, right? Our big wide main streets that you don't see that necessarily even on the other side of the state. So we have our kind of our big wide main streets and our tree lined streets, our less hills, you know, all of our terrain. We just have some interesting looking towns just by virtue of the topography that is, as Brent said, a pain in the rear end to deal with when we're building new things. You know, that less hills kind of crumbles right out from underneath the house. But we have a certain look that we want to try to maintain in our communities that says that we're a Western Iowa community. We also want to take a look at rehab because it does help improve the valuation of surrounding properties, or at least stops the decline in the valuation of properties. We don't like to see a lot of houses. Well, of course, in a disaster related community, you have to plan on there being houses that are coming down, but we want to try to maintain the life of our landfills as much as possible. So keeping entire houses out of the landfill is another thing we want to try to look at, because that does conserve resources and it is a more sustainable option. Rehabbing what we have is more sustainable. Why we have to look at existing housing stock is that there are things in existing housing stock that isn't necessarily helpful to people living in it. Out here, we do still have a lot of lead. We have a lot of radon. Over the course of time, older houses have asbestos. They can have mold from previous floods. We know out here that not only do we have flooding from the Missouri River, but we have groundwater issues, right? We have raising and lowering groundwater depending on how much rain we've gotten in any one time. So some of our older houses have experienced water issues in the past that maybe have never been 100% rectified and made safer. So another reason why we look at rehab is helping homeowners stay in their own property, age in place in a safe way, and get rid of some of the toxins and things in our lead-based paint and asbestos that might be unhelpful for that purpose. There are some difficulties in focusing on existing housing is that, as Todd was just saying, the money that you put in may not match the appraisal at the end. And it has a lot to do with the way Iowa appraises properties. Back in the day, if Mary Jo probably could answer this, if you remember back in the day, if you went to the assessor's page on every single property, they counted how many amenities you had. And you had to know that was kind of code for like how many bathrooms were inside. They would even have then they counted that if you had more than one inside bathroom, that was real high end, you know, for the assessor. They counted the quality of the windows. They used to look at specifically the quality of your shingles. I mean, anymore, they don't really even do that. But back in the day, and you can look at old assessors' records, they were counting the pennies on every single thing that you did on a house. So the dollar amount that you put into a rehab may not match the appraisal because a lot of things are considered general property improvements, right? Just cosmetic things. So painting doesn't necessarily add value. Putting in a new toilet doesn't add value because you expect there to be a toilet, right? So there's a lot of things that don't count as a dollar for dollar match when we're looking at rehab and tax abatement in particular. If we're looking at rental properties, it's very difficult to get landlords involved in rental rehab programs because if you can rent it for a lot of money and put no money into it, you're probably going to do that. That's probably the better business decision. So, but if we can sweeten the pot to try to work with landlords to keep their properties in good condition, that might be a way that we can approach it to retain some of our, in particular, single family housing that's being rented out so that it does not serve as a drag on the rest of the neighborhood. This isn't something I think would happen in our communities. I don't think that we would be pushing existing residents out of neighborhoods. That's more of a gentrification thing that's more likely to happen in an urban area. But as we improve areas, that could happen if we were, particularly in downtowns, if we're looking at second story properties, we might push out some existing uses if we can get more money for renting a giant loft than we would be getting from the little boutique that's paying to rent a retail space. So those are some of the things that could happen in a rural area. Some things to consider, as I mentioned, historic preservation, because you want to try to maintain the look of your community. Funding sources available for rehab. Obviously, SWPCO has funding sources available. Community Development Block Grants, one that we use for rehab. We can do individual projects with things like Habitat for Humanity. A lot of places will target specific neighborhoods or a corridor that you want to work on to make the community more attractive. And then you kind of decide when you're creating your program whether you want to have an interior versus exterior focus or some combination of the two. Most of the projects I've ever worked on is both. You're doing inside and outside of a property. And if you're using community development block grant, of course, that limits you to $24,999.99. Otherwise, you have to do all lead abatement on everything. So a lot of places will split it into a couple of different programs just to like get a little bit more money put into the house. So an exterior program might look at things like paint, windows, roofs, might be positive drainage is something that we've done out in Western Iowa to kind of keep water away from foundations that we have in our community. So that would be more of an exterior focus. And you can do interior programs that are looking at those big major systems. And what's difficult to sell to people is when we say we're going to do housing rehab, people get in their mind, Chip and Joanna are coming. And it's not going to be Chip and Joanna who are coming. It's going to be the plumber, the HVAC, the roofer, and it's not going to be a dramatic reveal when they're done. It's going to be, the value is extending the life of that property for another 20 years. So what people's idea of rehab and what rehab really is in the real world, that's not on HGTV, is something that we kind of have to educate the public about, that we're not looking for a dramatic, changing it from a 2-bedroom bungalow to a starter castle is probably not what we're looking at. So we have a question: what kind of housing rehab programs and incentives exist in your community, either for a developer or somebody who's buying or interested in purchasing a property in your town? What exists as incentives? We do this just to make sure you don't fall asleep, guys.
And please remember to say what community you're talking about when you hop off mute.
This is Cody from Logan again. I know that SWPCO has some grant funding. I think there was somebody on here from SWPCO that could probably tell you more than I know about those, but I know that there is some money available. I do believe that was still available last time I checked for a customer. So I do believe there's still some of those grants out there. Otherwise, I'm not really familiar with too many other ones in the county.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, this is Angela from Logan, and those SWPCO grants have been great, and I think there's not enough awareness that they're out there. I know that Cody has been, and some of the real estate agents have been great at getting people aware of that, but I think that is something that could be publicized a little bit more. But in Logan, we currently don't have any programs available for down payment assistance or free lots or any of those things. I wish we did.
That's something we could put on our list as something we might want to add to our strategic plan.
Yes.
I don't know if this Cody again. I don't know if this falls.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I was on a call earlier this week with the Missouri Valley River Economic Group. And apparently there's a buyback program for some of the communities to buy back properties that are in the floodplain and help people get relocated. I don't know a lot about it. I'm with Angela. I think there's not enough awareness for the programs that exist because it was the first I'd heard of it. And I was the only person from this area on the call.
Just Cody again. The only where I was going with, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to put it on there, but you can put it somewhere on here. And I think this brings up a good point. As you're doing this revitalization of existing stock of houses, I think it's important also to have some sort of the cities need to probably step up and have some sort of enforcement of some sort of codes to keep that the level of quality that you want to have in that community. You got to be willing to step up and make sure that happens. It's not it's a fine line. We don't want to run people out of the community and out of their houses, but we also want them to make sure that they are keeping it up and we don't start to see those broken windows because as you alluded to earlier, that just leads to more broken windows. So and then I think obviously the absence of not having all these, we have a lot of communities represented here and we don't have anybody that's got any sort of incentives or programs to help those houses in your community to flourish. That's obviously something we need to make sure we address as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Cody. Anyone else?
Are there any city administrators? Are there any city administrators on here that can share what programs are available that we might not know are available?
I think we've been looking at more ones that you control yourself rather than just anything that's available statewide or federal. If not, we'll move on. So how does rehab happen? Who does rehab? Obviously, individual homeowners undertake rehab. It's also something that local governments can do. Rehab is a good starter project for nonprofits because a lot of this work doesn't require a high level of contractor knowledge base. So it could be if you were going to do something like a painting program that does exterior painting, that can be an all volunteer thing. We have a lot of people that flip properties that they do this just as their job, or they might do a couple a year where they just remodel a house and buy it cheap and sell it for a profit. We have community action agencies that do housing rehab that focuses mostly like on weatherization, energy efficiency, new homeowners like doing down payment assistance. We also have regional housing trust funds. A lot of these are managed by our councils of government, and those also can be used to do housing rehab, not just like one project, but you'd be identified doing 10 or 15 houses at a time. So, and over maybe several communities. So those are how we kind of operate them out in Western Iowa. Our COGS might have a program that's available, but they might do a house in this town, a house in that town, another 2 or 3 over here. And over the course of time, you might have several houses that are done over a 5-year period of time as they get to people who are applying to have that work done in the community. So what are some barriers that you see to homeowners investing in their own houses and making improvements that retain the value of the properties that you have in your community now? What stops people from doing investment in their properties?
It's super hard to get a contractor for that small, medium-sized job. Just speaking as a homeowner, it took us 3 years to find someone to build us a back porch.
What else is serving as a barrier to homeowners investing in their housing? Hard to find contractors, hard to find money. Cost of materials, contractors are years behind, okay. Do people not see the value in that? Are they afraid to make improvements, thinking that if they do, they're gonna just pay more taxes? Matching, lack of match for grants that they could afford. If they make the repairs, I think they would update and repair their homes. Okay, so coming up with the match.
Valley. I see a lot of times procrastination would be a barrier for a homeowner. There's always next week, next month, next year. I'll get to it.
As I tell my wife, you don't have to remind me every 6 months. It's on my list. Jeez.
My list. I have a list going too. I think we all do. Could end up with more money in the house than it's worth. Okay, that's another good comment. Okay, age and health. Okay, that's another thing. That's another reason to use like volunteer type groups to work with people on some things that just kind of get beyond people, right? So in Centerville, for instance, Centerville's in Appanoose County, so down southern, kind of down by Missouri, about midway across the state. They had a group called the Bob Group. I don't remember what it stood for, but they went out and just helped elderly people in the community with outdoor things that had gotten out of their control. Old garages that aren't being used as garages, but are all leaning and crazy. Overgrown trees, overgrown shrubs, overgrown lots. Taking down some of that and making it more manageable. So that's a good neighborhood improvement, neighborhood revitalization project that you can do with nonprofits or a volunteer group, is helping senior citizens with age or health issues just tackle some of these outdoor things that kind of pull the house down with it. Whether it could be just some the degeneration of outside stairs, sidewalks cracked up, things like that could be done without a contractor, that could be done by volunteers. That's something you could do too. I'm going to move on so we get you finished up. Burlington, Iowa was another place where they did this. This was a healthy neighborhoods project that they did. They had to have five neighbors in a 2-block area had to participate, and the city would pay the cash match for property owners up to $1,000 for exterior projects. And it included these kind of outdoor things like leaning wonky porches, doing painting, siding improvements, exterior lights on houses, front doors, landscaping, just outdoor things that, with a couple $1,000 could really spruce up a neighborhood. And that's what Burlington, I think they had about 10 applications, 5 neighborhoods with 5 families each applied in the first round, and they fundraised this money from the Chamber of Commerce. They had a local community foundation, and it was a realtor's office that chipped in to come up with the money to do the matching grants for these neighborhood exterior improvements. And that's kind of a neighborhood revitalization type of project. There's some other things that we want to take a look at when we're looking at what a community, a smaller community can do that would facilitate housing rehab or new construction development. And that's taking a look at our ordinances that are governing existing structures. Some of our zoning practices have a tendency to stifle our ability to do rehabilitation. We talked a little bit tonight about just square footage of lots, about the small infill lots, but sometimes we might have setbacks that make it harder for us to do rehab, or we might be putting new rules on old properties. So things like Mary Jo had mentioned, some of the lots only being big enough to accommodate an accessory structure like a garage or additional lawn space. We might look at non-conforming use restrictions. Historic preservation comes with a lot of rules about how we reuse properties. And then we also have a lot of zoning that plays a part in converting big old single family homes into multifamily apartments. And, you know, up in my neck of the woods, we had a lot of this, and I spent a lot of my time when I was working for the city bringing old cut up houses that were cut up and into apartments back into single family housing because we just couldn't accommodate the traffic. That having that many living units within a very narrow street, we couldn't accommodate much of that anymore, and our utilities couldn't accommodate that either. So that's something that we need to take a look at as well. Cody mentioned having the will and the desire to do code enforcement, whether that's nuisance abatement on visible things that you can see from the street, or whether it's inspecting rental properties to make sure that they actually meet code. Most of our communities in rural parts of the state do not have a rental registry. So they're not sure what houses are being rented to other people and which ones are owner occupied. So that's something that we may take a look at if it looks like that's a big need in the community. If you have a lot of absentee ownership of properties that are then being rented by people who are not necessarily maintaining them to the level of community standards, that's something we want to take a look at. Who enforces this code is something that you have to decide at the local level. Sometimes you do it based on complaints. So it might be complaints that come to the police department, then it becomes a law enforcement action. Or if we have a system put in place, a lot of communities will share the duties. It might be a code enforcement officer that works through several different communities. Or another thing that's been successful in smaller towns is, like, for instance, Modale doing it for Logan, and Logan doing it for Missouri Valley, and Missouri Valley doing it for Dunlap, because we know that, you know, it's hard to do code enforcement in the communities we live in because we don't want to anger everybody. And the other thing that is that we might be related to everybody. So it gets to be a fairness issue where some people get away with things because they're related to us, and other people who aren't related to us or aren't from our town originally, we throw the book at, right? So we want to make sure that if we're going to do code enforcement, that our codes are enforced fairly for everybody, regardless of tenure in our community or who they might be related to. So we want to look at how do we develop processes that are fair for everybody. So who does that inspection? Is it a code enforcement officer that's trained in that? Some places have a police officer who does it. A lot of places have people who are working within the fire department that receive special training to do housing inspections. And then there's the issue of who pays for that. If you have a rental registry and people have to pay a little fee every year to be on the rental registry, you just use the funds from that to pay for the inspection. Like every third year, you collect the fee every year, but do the inspection every third year. And that way it kind of pays to keep somebody employed as a code enforcement officer, at least part-time. Like I said, there's a lot of communities do a cooperative agreement for sharing their enforcement personnel across jurisdictions. You might just not have that much need. So maybe there's somebody within the county who can do it for everybody, or you can share, well, you don't want to share across the river, I guess, so they have different codes. So try to stay in Iowa if you do that. Blair probably wouldn't help you out too much on that. So our nuisance abatement programs can maintain a higher level of community satisfaction and improve curb appeal, right? Because we're addressing problems before they become bigger problems. We also need to define what we consider to be a nuisance and make sure that that matches our community values. We had a lot of discussion over the course of time about what was the appropriate level of the height of grass before you sent the people out to mow the lawn and send the people a bill. So again, deciding what's a nuisance for your community. It isn't necessarily a standard thing throughout the state. That's something that you need to decide, and then decide who's going to enforce that rule, who's going to inspect to make sure that it's done, and who's going to pay for any work that you do. Typical nuisance, like I said, typical nuisances might be overgrown lawns, unshoveled sidewalks in the winter, that kind of thing, or something that's clearly a blatant nuisance, like garbage piled up. Lots of thing that we have is unlicensed and inoperable vehicles. That's another thing that's kind of typical in our neck of the woods for properties. We've mentioned a couple times accessory dwelling units, and these are things where there's another use on the same property as a single family home. We used to call them like granny houses. We've gotten rid of a lot of them over the course of time, but they're kind of coming back, where you might have a mother-in-law apartment above a garage, for instance, or a teenage, like an apartment, a separate apartment in a garage or in a shed or some outbuilding that's used for some other purpose besides your single family home. Your enforcement is done through your city code. I said, make sure that it's fair and consistent. Consult your city attorney, especially in regard to abandoned and derelict buildings. I will send you, when in your final report, I'm going to send you an example of how the city of Colfax, Iowa does this, because they have a really good system for evaluating abandoned properties, who owns the properties, finding addresses for these properties. And then they have letters that they use to try to get people to just donate the properties to the city so that they can be torn down and resold. So I'm going to include that in your final report. Try to, when you're dealing with code enforcement, stay out of just personal disputes and arguments between neighbors as much as possible. So typical things that cause fights within neighbors are overhanging tree limbs and who's responsible for that. Fences are a big one, and water flow over properties. Those are things that are kind of typical neighborhood squabbles that you want to try to stay out of as much as possible. In addition to new construction and multifamily housing, we also want to take a look at neighborhood revitalization projects. So things that other communities of a smaller size have done that have had a big impact on them include things like city cleanup days. The ones I used to do in my urban renewal neighborhoods, we used to just line the street with dumpsters that took certain things that people are unlikely to take to the dump themselves because they're kind of expensive to get rid of. So we'd have an entire dumpster that was nothing but white goods, washing machines, dishwashers, washers and dryers, refrigerators, things like that were, and then we had a company that took the Freon out of that because you can't buy that anymore. And most of the time we made money on that deal. Another one was tires. We'd have an entire dumpster that was just nothing but tires, because at the dump it cost $6 a piece to get rid of a tire. But we had a deal with Iowa Waste Exchange where they took all of them for like $10 a piece. So we made $4 on that deal. So we'd have a separate event for old hazardous waste and toxins that are household hazardous waste, old paint, old chemical solvents, cleaning things. That would be something that you would have. And then we would have volunteer groups. And in my case, it was the Boy Scouts that came and we'd go from neighborhood to neighborhood to help people with things that are just heavy and awkward to get out of basements. Elderly people that might have old pieces of furniture, old mattresses, things that are heavy and awkward for people to carry. We'd have volunteer groups that help people get rid of that stuff so it doesn't end up out in the yard. You can do neighborhood garage sales and recycling and swap meets. That's a way of addressing some of that stuff. You could have amnesty days where people can drop things off that they shouldn't take to the dump or shouldn't have. You could do property recognition programs like Yard of the Month or best remodeling project, ways that you kind of bring attention to people doing good things within the community. You can look at weatherization projects. A lot of utility companies, we're up in Mid-American Energy property, used to have a big project with windows, and they do insulation wraps for water heaters, and this thing where they put the film screen over the windows that would reduced air leakage, or they'd come in and do the little blower test to see how they could improve the functioning of your furnace. So there's a lot of different things like under weatherization that can be done to help kind of introduce the idea of rehab and property improvements to individual property owners. A Brush of Kindness is a program that's done, kind of came about in the Cedar Rapids area after the floods of 2008. And this was a lot of different volunteer groups that got together, and they do exterior painting programs. We have another couple of big churches in our area out in Western Iowa that do, where they come to your town for about a week and just go and do exterior painting projects. You have to get on their list to come, but they come about every year and do several houses. So what are some of those community betterment programs that you have available to you to use? Do any of you do things like cleanup days? Sometimes you can do them after a storm is a good time. You get people to bring their brush and detritus and stuff like that. Model does cleanup day, sometimes 2 each year. Awesome. Anyone else? Mount Damon started cleanup day last year. First one went so well. People love this, people. These are great projects. People love these cleanup days. Anyone else?
I have a question for people in Woodbine. Does the school still do the paint-a-thon?
We need to get that going again. We haven't done that for about 5 years now. We didn't have any applicants, but now I think we have plenty of applicants at this point.
Problem with cleanup days is that the residents that need it most never participate. That'd be the story of life. That's why getting volunteers to help with that can help alleviate some of that. That group in Centerville went door to door and just knocked on the doors. Said, we're here to help you if you got anything.
I was going to say that last comment applies to my teenagers as well.
Okay, well, those are some things to consider. Let's see. We're going to be moving into our next step. Let's talk a little bit about our next step that we have coming up. We're going to be moving into strategic planning. So we'll be in touch here in the next couple of weeks, looking at you to come up with 2 dates. Each town needs to come up with 2 dates for us. And as we're thinking about our strategic needs, kind of go back to what we talked about tonight. We were kind of looking at some inspirational things. What are some things that maybe would inspire you to come up with some new projects that address single family or multifamily or neighborhood revitalization, kind of building on what we did last week, talking about what's your overall need in the community. What are some issues that are driving your needs? What priorities you might have, what your goals might be. Now, how are we going to come up with some of this? As we've done our 2 sessions of education. Our next step is going to be, we have an electronic survey for you to distribute amongst your networks, right? And then we've been using this survey with our rural housing readiness assessment, but we did adapt this one for our disaster recovery communities. That's you guys, Harrison, Mills, and Fremont. So we're asking some more additional questions in addition to what we ask normally through our rural housing readiness. In this particular survey, it's really kind of 2 surveys in one. Some of the questions are if you live in Harrison County, you live in one of these communities, gives you a whole set of different questions. Then if they say that they don't live in our community, we're asking a whole bunch of other questions about what's keeping them from moving to our towns. And what we're kind of looking at is we want to get some information from people about what would it take to get people who work at some of our schools or hospitals, our manufacturers, our retail to get them to not drive in from Omaha. So we want to look at, is there a set of population that could become citizens of our communities? So we want to take a look at that. We also want to take a look in this survey about what are people looking for housing? What's the next housing decision that they're going to make? In that case, are they looking to downsize? Are there people looking to upsize, but just not finding that as an opportunity? What price points are they interested in looking at? If they were looking to upsize, what would they be looking to spend to do that? If they're looking to downsize, what are some of the amenities that they need to see to be able to make that decision? So this survey is going to give us a lot of really good information on that. In the communities that I've worked with so far on this program, the other big font of knowledge comes from a couple of open-ended questions that we ask about priorities and issues in the community, where people just kind of, we're not giving you a multiple choice answer. There's people are just saying what they think. In all of the ones that we've done so far, to me, that's been the most fascinating information that we've gotten back. And in a couple of communities, it's really been super informative about how they then structured their strategic plan based on what people said in the survey are big issues for them. Because a lot of things in housing people aren't necessarily talking about. And this is one way for us to get a lot of feedback. Estherville did a super job of going through their survey results and really tying that to their strategic planning process. So what we're going to do is we've sent you out the link, and then Carter and Renee are going to send you it in an email form tomorrow morning as well. It's just a link that's you can put on a social media site, on the city Facebook page, your city website. If you have email lists, I know Carter has a super extensive email list. Renee probably has a super extensive email list. So does Leslie. People that you could just send it out to anyone. Brent at the school district in Mo Valley, that would be a really interesting group to get from your employees about what they're thinking about housing. If Renee can get this to some of what I think last time we had mentioned Tommygate in particular, if we can make sure that some of our larger employers also get this survey, we want to really kind of focus in on people who either could move to our community or that we need to retain in our communities to kind of keep some of these major services going. So we're going to leave that survey open for a month, because then we'll take some of that input that comes particularly from those open-ended questions, and we're going to incorporate that into your strategic planning process. Like I said, we're going to be in touch with you in the next couple of weeks, because we need to have you pick 2 dates for your strategic planning sessions. The first, each of them are about 2.5 hours tops. Kind of depends on how many people you have, how quickly we can move through, but plan on it being about 2 to 2.5 hours. The first session is going to look at your big overall vision of what you want to accomplish. And then the second session, we're going to focus on what are 3 to 4 specific projects that you feel comfortable moving forward with, that we could be writing grants for when they open up in August for the disaster recovery money for CDBG. What do you feel comfortable moving forward with? In that way, we're also going to look at plotting those out on a timeline, and we're going to have some groups involved in each of those projects. So between now and your strategic planning session, if you've kind of developed an idea in your head of what you think you need to do, who are some people you want to make sure to invite to that strategic planning session? Because now's your opportunity to say, if we're going to do, I'm hearing a lot of stuff with the demolition, taking down some of these properties so that we can reuse the properties. Let's look at the availability of the assessor. When can we get with him on one of these groups? Is there somebody that you have in town that would do that work in particular, that would take a contract and take down several of those houses? Maybe that's somebody you would want to invite. If there's a group, several of you have mentioned Missouri Valley, you've mentioned annexation, someone else mentioned annexation. Let's look at if there is somebody who would be a larger contractor who might be involved in doing some single family homes, a banker, if we don't already have one on your group, realtor, if you don't have one already participating, who would maybe sell some of those lots. So be thinking, and kind of in the back of your mind, if you kind of have an idea of where you think your town is going, to invite some of those people to participate in that strategic planning session so that we get them on the team from the word go. So we're going to come back to you for a couple of dates. We know it's summer and all of us have been stuck in our homes for 15 months. So we understand that we'll be super flexible if evenings work best for you, if you want to go in the day, whatever works for you, just will give us a couple options so that we can make sure we have staffing available, because it takes a few more people for us to do our strategic planning process. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? Carter, Renee, do you guys have anything to add?
Abby, I did go ahead and send a link out that you sent me to the survey out to them earlier today, and a couple of them have already taken it and gave me some feedback on the survey.
Yes, yes, guys, everyone that's here, take that survey as well. In addition to distributing it to the people that you know and groups and networks that you're involved in, take it as well. Okay, I think that's all
Abby, real quickly, Abby, this is Angela. This will be, tonight's presentation will be available, correct?
Tonight's?
Yes.
I'm recording it. Yeah, do you need it?
Yes, I have a couple people who missed that would like to watch it.
Okay, I will, tomorrow morning when it clicks off, it'll click off at 9 o'clock tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'll convert it and I will send it to Carter. And Carter, will you send that out tomorrow?
Yep, it worked really well last time, so.
Yeah, I'm
we'll
gonna
do
put
the
it
same
up
thing.
on YouTube like I did last time. So I'll convert it, put it up on YouTube, and then Carter will send you a link to that YouTube. And I'll tell you on there, because we came on about 6 o'clock to be able to answer any questions or just a chitty chat. I'll tell you where to speed up to.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, guys, there's still a couple minutes of daylight. Go water those flowers.
Thank you, everybody.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.
Abby, Linda from Modale also says that she would like the recording too, please.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, what I did, oh my God, that was a bear to get that to download last week. Good God. How long did that take? It was ridiculous. First of all, I went through the entire time and then I could not get it to upload at all. So I just went and put it up. It loaded it up to YouTube and that worked.
Yeah,
It took me a while to figure out how the heck to do that.
I've been doing that a lot lately too. It's just easier to put it in a YouTube format.
I just couldn't mail it. It was too much to convert it and get it to mail. Even when I scrunched it, I used 2 or 3 different things to smush it down and it still wouldn't go. So I'm just gonna convert it, pop it into YouTube, send it to Carter.
YouTube works really well, and
Yeah.
that worked well, and I sent it to the main people and they sent it to their groups.
Yeah, and I'll tell you where, I can't really edit, but I'll tell you where to roll it to start.
Yep.
So I think we were right on 6:30, so they could just blow through the first half hour and, oh, we're right on time. So we're good.
Yep. And you can probably stop that whenever you're done too.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I don't know how to even do it. I'll figure it out. Any other questions you guys can think of that you need?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Renee.
I'll send it out. I'll send it out to my larger list of people tomorrow. I just sent it out to the contacts that I have for this meeting earlier. I'll send it out to my larger group of people. And Carter and I had talked about that earlier today, sending it out to our list tomorrow.
Dates for this, like I said, we need they could go a week apart. They can go 2 days. They can go like a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday. They could do it all in one fell swoop if they felt they had the intestinal fortitude to do that. No one's done that yet. It's a slog. But if there, I mean, we have all of our, we have our Modale and our Mount Damon people that have all been together in one room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
Yeah, and I think they'll probably keep doing that.
and did it in person, I'd want to do both sessions together because it's not as long doing it in person as it is doing it on Miro, because Miro has its own issues with people having to type, and we have all the breakout rooms that we do, so we have more people.
Sure.
Because if we do it, even if we, what the breakout rooms are, when they get to that second session where they come up with the projects that they're doing, then there's a breakout room for each of those. So let's say there's one that's going to be infill lots, and there's one that's new construction, and there's one that's going to be financing. Everyone ends up with the financing one, and an annexation one. Then there's a breakout room for each of those. And so we staff those. I may end up having to train you two, Carter, and
okay,
to be breakout people on Miro, but it's literally just click. We would set it all up, and you just click on the little box and type in, and it'll go.
Okay.
So, but that's kind of how we do it. But that would be a worst case scenario, and only because, like Scott says, he's taken off, and we lost a couple staff people, and people are going on vacations. And
Abby, can you send us an email with like moving forward, what does it look like? So scheduling the dates, it's pretty much what you just said. We could have them back-to-back nights. We can have them week apart. We could do the one session, but this is how long it's going to take.
Yeah, I want them.
I agree.
They need to be, because I got to have time to do their final report. Because once they then do, because this is 8 reports, and each of them are about 200 pages. Once they get they identify what their 4 projects are, then I go back and I research those. So let's say they say, we're going to use the infill lots. Then we might say, that's why we need that map, Renee. We might need the map for each of those, here's a link to this project. Here's, this resource. So I need a little time to pull those together.
Yeah, so if you could just put in an email what that looks like for us, and so we can just send it to the groups.
And everyone's got to have that in their hands by July 31st. Because I think August 1st is when we can expect at the latest. Let's hope we could do it July 15th. Let's shoot for July 15th so that they have a couple of weeks to read it before they have to write a grant about it. But really by that time, Leslie will be in all of these. Leslie will know, who's looking at what, and she can kind of package who she needs to package. Like if there's 4 or 5 cities that say that they're going to do rehab, that's one grant, that they do on behalf of those 5. If there's one that's doing, she's going to have to do more than one demo grant, probably.
I would guess you're right about that. Yeah.
Because she's going to have to down. So that's probably but some of it could help save her some work, if there's several cities that are going to do the same thing, and she can write it as one grant rather than grant for this town, grant for that town, grant for this town. So we want to give her as much time as possible with that, but she'll know, from the strategic planning sessions where they end up.
Right.
So
I thought it went well tonight. They had good questions. They had good questions. They were all very engaged. I think it's going to be good. And if you send us that kind of little kind of bullet point of, like you were just saying, and Carter said too, if you could say, you could do it 2 days back to back, you could do it a week apart, you could do it the whole time if you want to. I think that'll be beneficial. We'll try to get that out to them when you get us that. And then Carter and I will send our big survey group lists out. And I did send it to them before the meeting, just so our main, I'm going to call it our core group, that's that we've always had from the beginning, got it. That way, in case they wanted to look at it before tonight, in case they had any questions, if they did have a chance to look at it. And then also after the meeting now, they kind of know a little bit more about it after you explained it more. So hopefully they can go post it to their social spots and, get it out to their groups as well. So I think we'll get a really good response from it once we get it out there.
Mapleton did theirs. They had 287 just from Mapleton. Esterville still has the record, is about almost 500 for Esterville. So
you're saying I need 501. Is that what you're telling me, Abs?
Oh, you're so competitive, Renee. we haven't had one of the full county ones come back yet. I haven't seen Mills County's just went out last week. So you're only you're only about a week behind Mills County at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
And
Well,
Fremont
that's good.
hasn't started. Fremont hasn't even scheduled yet. Their orientation scheduling meeting is next week. So you're.
Oh, question for you too. So like if I go on and take it, say when I'm at the office and it's the office email when I do it. And if Rhonda's in there and I say to her, hey, go do this survey because we need this survey. Will it kick you out if you're from the same email, or because the questions are different? It doesn't matter. You could have, like if, like say I was having a meeting and there was like, say 10 people at our office, or Carter had a meeting where there was 10 people, he could say to them, hey, if you got a minute, fill this out. Could we whip them all through from our?
I have it set to accept multiple from a single one, because we have a lot that we do extension where you might be doing, one person might be entering physical hard copy, which they could also do. They could also, if they had a group that they were working with, Carter, like that Modale or Mondamon group, if they want to just hit print on that and do that and administer it, on paper or fill it out on paper, they could do that and then just have one person enter them all.
So Mondamon could do it that way, hand it out to people and have them turn it back into the Jiffy Mart.
They could absolutely do that. Yeah.
There you go. I'm just trying to think of other options that for some of the towns, may work better or differently based on what they think is best for their community.
Yeah, like, Missouri Valley could put it in the newspaper. They could put the link in the newspaper story, and people.
I'm sending it to the paper, so I'm having them put it in the paper and put it on their Facebook. Tanya's working with me on that.
I know Missouri Valley has a website. Missouri Valley has a website.
Yeah, that way it'll go for Missouri Valley and Dunlap that way. And then Jacob, I know, will put it up for Woodbine and Logan's paper. So that way we'll hit those towns like that. And since they're all participants, that'll work out great too.
Yes, it's making me hark back to my first job out of college, Enterprise Publishing.
Oh, wow.
Blair and Woodbine, Blair and Missouri Valley were my two newspapers.
Well, yeah. I know Jacob and Tanya will put it in. So I know I'll be able to hit the 3 papers that hit the 4 towns. So it'll be great.
That'll be perfect. Yeah, that'll work. They can put it on their website and that'll work.
Well, actually it'll hit more than 4 towns because there's other people that take the papers, but know what I'm saying. Hit the 4 for sure.
If there's any way to reach people who are in, and we didn't talk much about this, because really it's the unincorporated areas, people who are living out in the country, that if we pick them up somewhere, that would be great. We will include their commentary in the countywide report. I'll just extract that.
Okay.
If we have some people who are out there, we do want to hear about that. It's not as bad. I don't think it's not as bad for you guys as it is for Fremont County
yeah, they'll have some challenges, I think.
Yeah. They have a ton of unincorporated there.
I have to take off. Thank you very much, Abby and Scott. I think tonight went really well. So thank you.
That's awesome. Love it. Thank you so much. See you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Maybe Abby, maybe I'll see you this weekend, Abby. I might come up and see what you got for me.
Okay. I might stick things in your purse even if you don't want them.
All right,
okay.
guys, have a good night.
All right.
Thanks, Abs. Bye-bye.